5, very much the magic number then for Atletico Madrid. Manita Historica. It meant that they can give the 5 fingers the wave to Real Madrid as they left the stadium. An embarrassing performance from Xabi Alonso's side as we welcome in Alex Kirkland. You know, Alex, it's kind of good that it went the way that it did in a sense that Real Madrid can't complain about scheduling. Atletico had 24 hours less to prepare. We're not talking about the referee and conspiracy and everyone's against Real Madrid. Real Madrid were just dreadful. And I imagine that's been mirrored, hasn't it, in the post-mortem in Madrid?
Yeah, it feels like everyone accepted that Atleti were clearly the better team, that Real Madrid played really, really badly. We heard that from Xabi Alonso. We've heard it from the players as well. It's been accepted in the press, the fan base, whatever minor complaints they might have about specific incidents or decisions. Those always come up, of course. Everyone agrees that this was really, really poor from Real Madrid. So, yeah, in that sense, I guess a good result, a great result in terms of the title race as well, and a great result in terms of just bringing up so many questions, because whatever we thought we knew going into this game about Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid kind of heading in the right direction, getting better, steadily improving, unbeaten in the league. And Atletico Madrid, of course, had all those doubts going into this game as well after their sort of uncertain start to the season. All of that's been turned on its head now. And this really feels like a really seismic result here. You know, results like this in the Madrid derby just don't happen. You know, it was 75 years since Atletico had scored 5 goals against Real Madrid in a competitive game. You have to go back maybe a decade to when Atleti won 4-0 at the Calderon, the last sort of big result on this scale in their favour. This is really big. And it's still quite early. I think Real Madrid are still shell-shocked, really, about this. And they've had no time, really, to analyse it, because in the meantime, they've had to fly 4,000 miles east to Kazakhstan for a Champions League game as well.
Craig, I just want to get Alex...
Well, you don't want your old job back at Real Madrid TV, though, do you? Because you really have turned on Real Madrid. You've turned and you just...
No, I'm just so happy we're not...
Well, as I said, I mean, if it all goes... If it all goes pear-shaped here, you're not going back. Barcelona TV? Any chance?
It's the least of my worries. Alex, looking at it, though, Craig mentioned it as we were discussing it on Saturday. Team selection was a bit of a head-scratcher, wasn't it? As we said, they started off so well this season, yet the changes didn't seem to really make sense.
Yeah, there have been a couple of big question marks about Xabi Alonso's team selection. One of those big ones is Jude Bellingham, of course. Fit again, available again. I think he'd only played sort of 20 minutes in total this season going into this game, and Xabi Alonso picked him from the start, and he didn't play well. The feeling is that he was rushed back into the team. Now, of course, you understand the inclination to do that because it's Jude Bellingham, but it did seem to upset the team, upset the balance of the team. It meant that Mastantuono dropped out, who's been playing really well. But I mean, there are poor performances all over the team. Players that otherwise have been really good so far this season. Dean Howson defended really poorly, especially in the air. Questions about him. Carreras, who's been very good at left back, had a really bad game as well. Yeah, some criticism of Xabi Alonso about the team selection, about the tactics, but also of the players, and plenty of individual performances as well.
Bellingham was this isn't a sort of attack on Jude Bellingham. He wasn't ready to play. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what you've achieved. Doesn't matter your stature, your presence. If you've played only 20 minutes, you're not ready to go in to a game of that intensity away from home. Not even at the Bernabeu, away from home. Against a side who are chasing their tail, as Alex said. They had a great result against Vallecano, but they were losing right until the end, until Alvarez bailed them out. So it was a huge week for Atletico Madrid, and they were always going to bring that energy. And when you have that in a derby, and we've all played in derby games, for whatever reason, it gets cranked up. The crowd are cranked up more, the players are cranked up more, everything just goes up. And when you haven't had any game time, that's very difficult. And not only starting him, but he lasted 70 minutes. And we talked about this at the weekend. He took Arda Güler off, who did give a penalty away. That can happen. But scored the goal, assisted, and Mastantuono, and Alex mentioned again, it's not a very good signal to send out early in the season. Basically, I thought it was quite negative in a sense, because you could have played Güler there and Mastantuono on the right, or wherever, and he would have had a better balance. He still would have had a playmaker, and he would have had arguably a better playmaker in Arda Güler. Maybe not as much of a threat getting in the box as Jude Bellingham. So I thought that was strange. And it looked like Carreras and Howson got about... It looked like they got about with the nerves.
Yeah.
And certainly for Dean Howson, who's a fledgling Spanish international now, but it's a bit different. It's a bit different playing at the Vitality Stadium and a South Coast derby against Southampton or whoever it is, and playing in the Madrid derby against Alexander Sorloth, who, he's not the greatest player, but he's a big beast of a guy. And if you get crosses into the box, and they did, particularly in the first half, whenever they put good crosses into the box, either in swingers or out swingers, whatever it was, if it was in a good area, he was attacking it and he was winning it. So they were all over the parish, pretty much on every position on the field.
When we looked at the signings that Real Madrid made during the summer, we thought they needed people to come in at the back. It's exactly what happened. But you look at someone like Carreras coming in and the performance, obviously, that he put in that 90 minutes. How do you deal with that as in Xabi Alonso's shoes to try and give him that confidence? Because he is going to be absolutely slated in the press and by the fans as well. There isn't much empathy when it comes to Real Madrid players and bad performances from their supporters.
I mean, such as the stage where when you're playing for Real Madrid, any subpar performance is amplified because of the size of the club. But now it's about the next few games to come and how Xabi Alonso handles that, how Carreras handles that. You put together a decent, against lesser opposition, I know there's Champions League in there, but if you put together 5 or 6 games where you start to rebuild your confidence, the team gets some good results, that's how you rebuild your own self-confidence. I think so much of that derby came as a shock to the less experienced team in that squad. And credit to Atletico Madrid for taking advantage of that. Because to Craig's point, I thought at 2-1, and you could probably say that the 2 Real Madrid goals were Atleti errors. I thought they would have folded. I thought Atletico Madrid would have folded given how poor their season has been going so far, given how easy Real Madrid make it look. Yeah, they responded. They're the ones who responded to going behind, as opposed to Real Madrid responding in keeping the ball and taking some of the emotion out of the crowd and maybe getting the crowd on the home team's back. It was Diego Simeone's men who somehow produced a comeback, a response.
That was a brilliant finish from
that really was. That really was an outstanding finish from.
But it was a bit like some of the Clásicos we saw last season. You know, Real Madrid were in it on the score sheet, but actually, when you looked at the actual game, and there was only one team in it.
Yeah, and Atleti, you know, as Alex pointed out, and for people that follow La Liga, have had a very, I'll be nice, very patchy start to the season. I mean, a few draws. You know, I think they were on up until this week. They'd looked as if they were almost out this. Put it one way: if they hadn't beat Vallecano and Real at the weekend, Real Madrid at the weekend, we'd probably be sitting here saying they're out the title race.
9 points, wasn't it?
That's how bad a start to the season they've had. The only saving grace it's been early. Now, you talk about these big games. We put a graphic up there of about 4 weeks worth of football leading up to October 26, which is the Clásico. So, as Shaq mentioned, it's about for some of these players rebuilding their confidence in these games. The problem is, you don't know, and Xabi Alonso doesn't know what he's going to get until they step back into that big arena again. It's okay, maybe beating Villarreal have had a good start to the season and some of these other sides in the Champions League, but until you step back into these games in Spain that everybody's looking at, the Madrid derby, the Clásico, he's going to be thinking, right, have they put that behind them?
Yeah.
Can these boys that really struggled, and there was experienced boys that struggled. Fede Valverde at the end with that slack pass for the Griezmann goal. Like, the game was finished at that point, but it kind of summed it up. It ran through the whole team. But the likes of Valverde and Tchouaméni and Mbappe and all these others, they can put it behind them because they've done it before. The problem is some of these less experienced guys, when they step out in that Clásico in October 26, if selected, they're thinking, and I'm telling you, we've all done it. We've all done it. You've had a bad game and a huge game, and you step onto that big arena the next time, and you think, right, I can't do that again. So it's in your head, and it's very difficult to get out your head until you put a performance in. And I think that's the problem for Alonso going forward.
And I think the familiarity of the performance that we saw, Alex, against big teams. We saw it obviously against Milan last season. They laboured in the Champions League, and we all know the record. We can see right here, of course, in El Clásico as well. Embarrassing, historical. It was, of course, the way in which Barcelona tore them apart. last season. And as much as Xabi Alonso has been getting credit, the way he's been handling Vinicius Jr., there's more running, there's more tracking back. This is the main test, obviously, these big games. And you could say so far, lucky against Marseille and obviously thrashed at the weekend.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a new era. This is supposed to be about fixing all the things that were wrong with Ancelotti's Real Madrid. But let's look at it. They've had two really big games under Xabi Alonso so far. One's in the Club World Cup semi-finals against PSG, and one is this derby. And in both those two games, they've been absolutely hammered. Now, Alonso was really quick to sort of try and paint the Club World Cup as being kind of separate, something else. The season starts, his reign really starts now. And then once again, in the first really big game this season, they've come undone really badly. Now, that's not to write off Alonso's Real Madrid, anything like it. He was saying again today, listening to his presser today ahead of the Champions League game, look, this is the process. It's a project. We're just getting started. We've been here for a few months. We need to learn from this. But very actually, you mentioned Fede Valverde, listening to him talk as well today. And he was saying, look, there have been lots of conversations since Saturday's game behind the scenes among the players trying to work out what went wrong. Was it about attitude? Was it about how we went out there onto the pitch? Things that shouldn't really be a question in a derby, a Madrid derby. Attitude shouldn't be an issue. Intensity shouldn't be an issue. But listening to Valverde today, those are the kind of conversations that some of the players have been having in the last 24, 40 hours on that long flight to Kazakhstan. So let's see how they react. And yeah, the big one, the one that's sort of ringed in red in the diary, is the Clasico. Because as you say, the Clasico record last season was abysmal, was historically bad for Real Madrid, losing every one of those Clásicos. That cannot happen again. There needs to be some sort of sign in that game that things have changed.